Today, I'm going to talk about a strategy for breaking down coding problems in interviews. So I've been a developer since 2019, so fairly new to the industry. And like a lot of people, when I'm on technical interviews, I get super nervous. It feels so high stakes and high pressure. And when that happens for me anyway, my mind tends to go blank. Even the simplest questions, I can kind of freeze up. So it really helps me to have a strategy like with the steps memorized so that when I am in this situation, it really helps keep me on task, keep me focused on the problem at hand, and it also helps me just to generally break down problems, tough problems. So I use this process even when not in interviews for breaking down tough problems, maybe not as explicitly for each step, but yeah, it's useful for just breaking down hard interview problems. So I'm just going to give the 5 steps that I've used. So I'm going to get started. So the first step is understanding the problem. So I found a sample problem, pretty simple, that we'll work through so I can show the steps. So say an interview asks you to write a function that takes 2 numbers and determines whether the sum is even or odd. So to understand the problem step has 5 sub-steps. So first, I would want to restate that problem in my own words. So in this case, I would say something like, okay, so you want me to create a method that takes 2 numbers, it adds them, it determines whether it's even or odd, and then returns a string, even or odd, depending on whether the sum is even or odd. So it's a good time to clarify that that's what they meant. Make sure you have the problem right. Make sure you have the same assumptions. So for step 2 here, what are the inputs? So in this sample problem, I would say, can I say that the inputs are going to definitely be integers? Would I have to deal with decimal numbers? You want to clarify these questions ahead of time. Could they possibly enter strings and I have to convert them, or should I throw an error in that case? So yeah, what kind of, also, could the number be is there within a certain range, or do I have to handle really large numbers, which can be a problem in JavaScript? So when you understand the inputs, what are the outputs needed? So in this problem, I would say that there's possibly 3 outputs: a string, say even, string odd, and possibly for an invalid input, some kind of output there. And I would really clarify, would you want me to throw an error? Would you want me to return something, return undefined or something for the output? So it's just getting clarification, understanding the problem. And so how would we get the output from the input? So in this case, I see 2 main steps, which are adding the inputs and determining whether that sum is even or odd. And I could do that. How I would go about doing that is getting the remainder when divided by 2. And if it's 0, then I would say that it's even, if not odd. So do we have enough information here? So if in the number 2, I kind of clarify, do you want me to handle really big numbers? Do you want me to convert strings if I have to? So you want to make sure you completely understand what you need to do. And also, what labels could we choose for important data pieces? And this helps you think about what you need to solve the problem. So you need to name the function itself, name the parameters. I would probably use a variable to hold the sum before I decided if it was even or odd, things like that. So once you thoroughly understand the problem, you would move on to step 2, which is explore concrete examples. And this is a simple kind of problem. So start with a simple example. If say you wanted to find if the arguments were 1 and 2, you just add them together. That's fairly straightforward. And then kind of deal with all those kind of larger numbers if you had, if they wanted you to do that, get more complex. And this kind of doing in my head and also thinking about all the situations. And if you really understood the problem from the first step, then this will help you here. And also examples. So we should already know how they want us to handle an empty and invalid input. So at this point, like think of how you would handle that. Then we can move on to step 3, breaking it down. So this is where you're writing actual pseudocode or comments in writing out the steps of the problem. So I'll just go to my other screen here and kind of show you how I go about it. And this is how I kind of do things in general when I'm working on like a problem just in coding. So name the function. I just kind of skeleton the function. I'm just going to name the parameters A and B for now. So I just straight up write comments for every step of that I want to handle in the function. So the first step would be validating input and throwing an error or handling it, returning the function if they're invalid. Step 2, I'm adding to A and B. Step 3, I am dividing by 2 and getting the remainder. Step 4, if remainder 0, return even, else odd. All right, so that's my pseudocode there. And then I can move on to step 4, which is solving. If you can solve it now, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, if you still have difficulty, you're not sure how to solve it, you can simplify that by finding the core difficulty that you're having, that the part that you're not understanding, and kind of taking it out, ignoring it. Then just write a simplified solution and try to incorporate that difficulty back in if you can. And so once you have, I'm not going to solve it just for time, but once you have that solved, then you would move on to step 5, which is refactor. Look back at your code, do some refactoring, do some code cleanup, clean up your comments, make sure they're understandable, and think about the way you went about it and think maybe, is there a better way to get the results, a clearer way that makes it more readable, understandable, intuitive, and also you could be discussing these things like with the interviewer, like this is why I chose this method, and especially bringing up like performance and space, like O notation, kind of, they're probably going to ask you these things anyway. So it's really want to make sure you do it like to the best of your abilities and show them that that's what you know and why you went the direction you did. So those are the 5 steps I use when I'm going about coding interview problems, and hopefully that's helpful. I did not come up with these myself. They came from a Udemy class that I did. So, and it's a pretty good class that teaches you algorithms and data structures in JavaScript. So if you are learning JavaScript, might be a good check out. I use it to kind of brush up my skills when I need to. Also, and he got these steps of problem solving from a book, which was How to Solve It by George Polya. And that is a book about problem solving in mathematics. So might be interesting read to check out. So that's it from me. I will have a PDF of a single page of these steps available if anybody would like it. And thanks so much.